So, before we start, I have a couple of introductional slides. While you read the spoilers on them, I need 2 volunteers, one from this side of the room and one from that side of the room. Raise your hand, please. Anyone? Like, you're not coming on stage, you're not doing anything, I just need someone to support me. Okay, please, you nod every time I look at you. Just nod. Just say, oh yeah, you're right. That's all I need, is moral support that I need through the talk. Someone this side, yeah, you laugh at my jokes. Even if they suck, you laugh, okay? That's it. You know, it's a bit stressing to get on stage and talk to a crowd that is technical about a non-technical talk. And because your expectations are different, right? You might expect a JavaScript conference to close strong on the JavaScript side. And this talk is actually about economy, which I'm not qualified to talk about anyway. But again, it's an atypical talk for myself anyway. It's a talk not about coding, as I mentioned. It's a talk not about hyped tech, and it's not a talk about anything I built personally. So, a few of you right now might be asking yourself, why am I here? Why didn't I take the train home earlier? And it's a great question, isn't it? It's one of the core questions that us as human beings ask ourselves a lot of times. Why am I here? What's my purpose? And ultimately, who am I? And thank you for asking. My name is Marco Cedaro. Thank you. My name is Marco Cedaro. I'm the engineering director for e-commerce at a company called Storio Group. We are a manufacturing company. We build personalized everything about t-shirts, I guess, and we are one of the biggest players in Europe. I grew into the director of engineering role in the last couple of years. I used to be an engineering manager, and before that I used to be a software developer, mostly front-end, but with growing full-stack responsibility as I moved up the ladder. This talk reflects a little bit some of the challenges that I faced being a developer, making choices, and then moving to a different altitude, and have to assess those choices through the lens of the mistakes I made because of that. But yeah, let's deep dive. Let's roll back a little bit. So why am I here? And in this case, the hi there is not me anymore, it's you. Why are you here? Why are you in a technical conference? So the way I want to tackle this is to employ a technique called the 5 whys, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a technique developed by Toyota to get at the bottom of a problem. So you start asking yourself why of the problem, and then why again, and then why again. And in theory, if you do that enough times, you get to the root of the problem. So I've done that with a group of people, friends of mine, people on Slack that I know, part of the community, etc. And this is just an example. But I don't remember if the person I asked this question is in the room, if it was Max or Chirpo, or I asked Cesare, one of the organizers. You know, I asked around, right? And they asked people, why do you go to conferences? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? And they ended up building a list of reasons why you might be at conferences. I hope I captured everything. If I didn't, please shout at me later. Let's have a beer together. And you talk to me about your reasons for being at the conference. Ultimately, yes, you're great at this. Ultimately, I kind of started grouping things that you might want to do in a retro, for example, what are the tickets that make sense together, and I identified reasons why people go to conferences. So staying engaged with your job. You might be a bit on a slump of boring work and you want to re-energize yourself, or you might want to prepare your technical ground for your next job, learning new things. Next job doesn't mean another company, right? It could be the same company becoming senior, so you need to learn new things. Or you might want to prepare the social ground for your next job, getting to know people that is doing different jobs in different companies, understanding how they operate, and even building a network that might lead you to your next gig. And then obviously there is people that is like, honestly, I respect you. Yeah, like it's a fair answer. Like, you should be enjoying this benefit that the company offers you. It's not a mistake to be here for that reason. Anyway, if you boil it down again and you bring to another layer, you're here because you need to pay your rent, ultimately, or whatever it is that you pay, you spend your money on, right? Everyone has their own thing. It's fine, it's fine. A litter Cat litter for me is a big one. I have 3 cats, I love them. Anyway, point is, you need to pay your rent, and you need to develop your skills, and you need another job. Eventually, maybe not, maybe you're fine with yours, but you stay alert, right? You keep tabs on the market, etc., etc. And then obviously, you folks, you are here, but have you asked yourself why your company pays for it? And the truth is that your company pays for it for this reason. Company see a benefit in sending you here because you bring back something. They're not doing it for free, right? Like they're not sending you here because they are a charity or something. They send you here because they see value in you learning stuff, networking, blah, blah, blah. So why are we here effectively? Because the economy is important, whether we like it or not, whether we reason in terms of economy or not, whether we like the free market, whether we like communism or whatever, like economy is driving our culture, ultimately. And the economy is changing massively as we speak. You might have noticed that if you have a mortgage, rates went through the roof. But this is something that is happening, and in the past 10 years, borrowing money was cheap. Companies were loaded with investment because it was cheap to borrow to invest in organizations. This has changed. And again, as you can see by the graphs, in the last couple of years, post-COVID, again, if you have a mortgage, you know what I'm talking about. It's now way more difficult to have access to loans, to borrow money from banks, and that is impacting businesses and our job as well as a cascade effect. I'm not sure if you follow the Pragmatic Engineer newsletter. I do heavily recommend to do it because it's incredibly well written, and it talks in depth about a lot of topics that are incredibly important for us as developers. But in this newsletter, the author went through a set of 4, I think, newsletters where he tackled how the business are impacted, the individual is impacted, the technology we're using is going to be impacted by this change in interest rates. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I just want to mention a few things out of that to understand better why we're here. Sorry, what's the impact of the economy? So for businesses, as I said before, it's going to be harder to raise funds. There will be more pressure for profitability. The continue investing without return is not going to be a thing anymore. Inflating the numbers to hope that at some point someone will acquire you might change. You might want, companies will be pushed by their boards to get profitable. And there will be pressure for efficiency. So achieving the same goals with either the same amount of people, achieving more goals with the same amount of people, or achieving the same goals with less people, and that's why you see the rounds of redundancy and all of that happening in the industry as we speak. On developers, though, as a cascade effect, again, there is going to be some impact in the coming years. There will be an ask for more full stack people because less specialized people means that more people can do anything. There will be an ask for cross-platform because, again, you can reuse and rotate and move people around without having to hire and onboard and blah, blah, blah. Shift left, so architectural responsibility pushed on developers, and QA responsibility pushed on developers, and developers having to do more in the same time, by the way. There will be more attention to the buy versus build. Building internally might not be as efficient anymore as it used to be. A lot of companies started building everything at some point. You might see that if you work in big organizations, some managers have started to think, oh, but what if we take that out and replace with this commercial solution? The goal is eventually to reinvest the headcount that is working on that thing on something else that is potentially more important for organization to achieve profitability or efficiency. And then, again, less time potentially for R&D or tech debt, which is, I think, something that most of us, anyway, care about, right? This is the quote that closes that series in the Pragmatic Engineer newsletter. And, I mean, it puts an interesting twist on it because I think it's an interesting angle from a manager to say that there is a lot of bullshit coming from their people. I don't like that a huge amount. But you see what they're talking about, right? I don't know about you, but my experience being a software engineer, I did complain a lot about how the company was running. I wasn't happy about things. I want to change this and that. We potentially might have less room for doing that in the coming future. So here we are. Good note, right? Are you happy? Yeah, so my talk hasn't started yet. Now I'm going to try to shock you a little bit It shouldn't be, like the next sentences might be shocking to someone, some others might agree. If you disagree, that's fine, that's not the point. But yeah, let's go. Code is a liability. Again, you might agree or you might disagree, that's fine. The thing is, I can prove it. So this is a set of screenshots that myself and one of my best mates sent each other almost every time we change job after a few months. I still believe that in the last one is been cheating and just remove locked files. But ultimately, how do you feel about the delete at the add ratio of code? As these healthy metrics? Like, do you think we've delivered value for those companies by doing this, right? Like, just look in the numbers. Like, are you happy when you delete code, right? Proving my point. Why do we do UX research before building something? Why don't we go straight at building? Because building something is expensive. And same goes for MVPs. We don't go for the full thing. We test it on the market. We try to do something small, iterate over it, and get eventually to something, hopefully if we have time to iterate. And so not only code is a liability, again, it's okay to disagree. Every decision results in debt. This is not me saying it. This is a quote from the write-up of a session at the RootConf 2018. I give you the time to read it. I'm not going to read it myself because that's just boring. But yeah, I've read. So the thing is, you knew that. Maybe you didn't have that like clocked in, but you knew that. We have all sorts of acronyms to remind ourselves not to write more code than we need, or to keep it terse, or to don't exceed in early optimization, right? Like we've been doing that since day one. We always done that. We always knew that writing too much code, or abstracting too early, or repeating yourself, rewriting the logic everywhere is bad, because it's a cost to maintain, it's blah, blah, blah. Okay. Let's take a step back a second. Let's zoom out a bit. In an organization, there are layers, right? So there is a layer called tactical, which is the street view, in a sense. And it's your team, like the decision you make every single day in your team about what ticket to prioritize in your backlog. That's a tactical decision that you do for what's important, the most important next thing for yourself to be taken on. The next layer is the operational. It happens at the layer above, potentially between managers. In bigger companies, there might be directors or whatever, but there is a group of people that tries to analyze bigger programs that touch different teams, and how the dependency are organized, and how do, like, you know, the people that build guns. Anyway, thank you. You're not nodding, please. Thank you. So this is called the operational or helicopter view. And then at the layer above, there is the strategic view, which is usually the C-star team, the CTO, CPO, and whatever, that they're looking at the next 3 years. What is the most important thing in the next 3 years, right? Every time that you make a decision, these 3 layers being intrinsically interconnected means that you have to think about the decision you're making in the context of these 3 layers. Is the decision I'm making right now, does it make sense at the level above? And just to name an example, we are a React company. Every developer is a React person. I need to build an MVP. Would I pick Vue? Maybe, but does it make sense? This is not a decision that is just for your team, right? Like, this is a decision, like, if tomorrow this becomes product, do we have to rewrite that from the ground up because we don't have any Vue developers? What does that mean for hiring, for example? Is there a market out there in my country, or do I need to go remote to find Vue developers? This is a decision that doesn't just impact what you're building today. This is a decision that impacts operational, and this is a decision that impacts effectively strategic, right? As a developer, I never thought about things like that because it wasn't my problem. But again, decisions are important. Also, by looking at this last night, I couldn't help. Sorry, folks. I shouldn't laugh at my own jokes, but this is good. Anyway, so decision making. At this point, again, it doesn't matter if you agree with me or not. You know the point I'm trying to make. And what is coming next is a few ways that I think could help us making better decisions in our job and in our day-to-day. So this is the only bit of JavaScript that is actually in the talk, so enjoy it. Also, it took me a bit to build animation, so. Decisions are inevitable. Every single day we are posed with thousands of decisions that we need to make. Again, these are, there was just a joke about the complexity of JavaScript, blah, blah, blah. Also, JavaScript components, I felt like I had to put some JavaScript in it. But point is, we need to make a decision. It's not like we can shy away and not make them, right? So how do we make decent decisions, or at least not terrible ones? And again, I don't have a recipe. I have a set of things that could help you find a better way of thinking about the decision-making process that you have to employ to do your job better, or maybe your next job better, whatever. First of all, it's very important that you understand the context of the decision you have to make. The example that I brought up for this bit is the Canevin framework. It's called Canevin because it's Welsh, and apparently they don't pronounce the letters in the same way as we do. So the Canevin framework, if you are not familiar with it, is basically a matrix of ways of trying to read and understand how a problem posed to you could be read through, and gives you a way of processing what needs to happen for you to tackle that problem. So let me explain a little bit better. So the simple quadrant, for example, is problems that have a clear cause and effect relationship. This solution is usually straightforward, and you end up applying best practices. An example is building a form, which is the wrong example. What am I doing here? Yeah, okay, building a form. Building a form, fine, let's keep this one. I thought I changed them. Building a form. Building a form is a solved problem. It's not something, unless it's a very particular and peculiar form, but contact form of a website. You just apply best practices, right? You don't have to reinvent the form. It's something simple and straightforward. You just have to do the same things everyone has been iterating over in years of developing forms for the web in your technology, whatever. But ultimately, building the form is a simple problem. If you're inventing a form from scratch every single time, please, come to me and talk later. I'd love to meet you. And again, I'm not talking about underlying technology, right? I'm talking about for the customer, building a form for the customer. And then there is a more complicated scenario, which is building something more complex, for example. It's like there are obviously relationship between cause and effect, but they're not immediately obvious to anyone, to everyone. So example, building a car, you need a mechanic, someone that understands how to operate an engine or to put together an engine. I wouldn't be able to do it, but the mechanic would know what to do, right? He knows where the pieces go and blah, blah, blah. So that's a problem space that is not impossible to understand and solve, but you can't apply best practices. Best practices are not enough. You cannot open a YouTube video, follow the tutorial to build a car from scratch. Right? Unknown unknowns. So this is the complex stage where you are not effectively in control of everything, and there is no direct cause-effect consequence unless you experiment, test, and get a response. Again, an example could be devising a winning sports strategy. Think about football or something like that. You can put your team in the best position and everything, but you don't know how the other team is going to react. So throughout the game, you might have to adapt, adjust, sense how the other team is responding, and then go back and change your approach. Again, these could, if you realize you're in that space, it's not enough anymore to have an expert in the room. You also need to be able to do things, test things, probe them, get the sense of what's happening, and then act again. Oh, there you go. Here I changed them. These were way better. I'll go through them again with the new definitions. But let's talk about the unknownable unknowns first. This is where, it's a mess. You don't know what's happening. You need to act and do something and see how the system responds. Again, I think these examples were way better. I adjusted them last night, and so I made the mistake of not fixing the previous one. But known knowns, for example, treating a flu. Everyone knows how to treat a flu, right? You don't even have to go to the doctor most times, right? Because we know there are best practices. You take the medicine for the flu, you take a cover, and that's it, and you wait to pass, right? Treating appendicitis, though, less clear. Like you need a surgeon. You wouldn't want a doctor, a dermatologist curing you for appendicitis, right? You want a surgeon, an expert that knows what they're doing in that context. Unknown unknowns, making a diagnosis on someone that comes to you with as a doctor with a problem. You don't know what they have, they just claim to have some pain. I think that these were way better than the previous one, isn't it? And again, unknowable unknowns, which is red code. Someone comes in, you don't know what they have, they're just unconscious, you do something to revive them, and then you think about the diagnosis, right? First of all, you stabilize the system, and then you think of the diagnosis. The disorder, the area in the middle, is when you don't know yet in what space you are. So when you tackle a problem, whatever problem it is, whether it's an incident in production or making a decision on how complex is a project to bring home, unless you figure out in which part of the framework you are, you could end up making the wrong decisions. If you start applying the best practices that have been advocating for building Facebook in your React application, you might be failing at it, because your React application doesn't have the complexity that the Facebook has, so you don't need those best practices. Those are the wrong thing for you. You should move to something else. Okay, so that was one example. Another thing that I think is critical to make a good decision is to actually make the decision that you have to make, not all of them. One example that I have for this is I was in a team a while back. I was the engineering manager for the team, and we had constant bike shedding conversations. We were discussing every single refinement about everything all the time, and it was draining. At some point, I took everyone in a room, and I asked them to look at the list of the non-functional requirements on Wikipedia, as dumb as that. These are all like the possible things that a team could prioritize over another, effectively. What is the most important thing? So what I asked them to do is to agree on the top 5 for our system. What are the most important things that we need to be mindful of when we build software for the project we are making? Not everyone, like, not security first or whatever. For our system, what is the most important thing? This reduced the noise for our team massively, because most of the decisions were made by the principal, not by us anymore. For us, the first one was privacy over performance. We didn't care about performance. We were a CRM team. We sent emails. Emails are asynchronous anyway. They leave the mail system 5 minutes after. Doesn't matter, right? In the specific, it was like a abandoned basket email, which was leaving 2 days after the customer would have left something in the basket for our e-commerce. 2 days and 5 minutes, big deal. Point is, for us, that cut the crap of the conversation for 80% of the time. We could dedicate ourselves to meaningful conversation. It was fantastic. The unhappiness over code reviews was completely reduced because people wasn't bothering anymore about things that didn't matter for the team. And the team agreed on it. No one pushed anything on them. It was really a good thing. And I would advocate, even if you don't have by shedding problems, agree with your team what are the most important things. It's refreshing to see through other people's eyes how they think about your system anyway. Then, again, decision making. Have you ever been in the situation where no one would make a decision and you're stuck with not knowing what is important to do or what the best architecture is? Thank you for nodding. So one thing we do at our company, which I think is brilliant, is Rapid. Well, first of all, in Britain, they love a good acronym, and I think Rapid is fantastic for that. Rapid is a framework where you assign roles for basically every decision. So there is a person that is appointed to be the recommender, and they end up talking to all the people that are input. They talk to the agreeer, which is usually a stakeholder, someone that has some stake in the game. And the recommender puts together a document with a recommendation about what we should be doing about solving this problem. And then there is another person who decides. They hold the D, as we say. And that person decides, after the recommendation that has been made, knowing all the details about the recommendation, because everything that has been captured by input and agreeer has been put on paper, digital paper, of course. And then, obviously, there is someone that performs the action, the team, or whatever. Again, this is a simple technique where the people knows what they're accountable for. If you hold the D on something, you have to make a decision. You can't shy away. You can't have a team where the team lead, for example, doesn't make decisions because they don't want to step over the senior that is in the team. And this is a true example that happened to me in the past. It's incredibly powerful. It enables decision-making at pace, at scale. It works. If you ever been in a situation where it's difficult to make a decision in the team, if you're a tech lead that wants to delegate and empower your team members to be more active and more present in your team life, this is a great thing. Bring one as a recommender, the other one as a decider. They have to agree together. Fantastic. And then disagree and commit, which is a cultural piece, but needs to be enabled by action as well. It's not just enough to say to people, you can disagree and commit, because that's just telling them, do as I want. That's not the process of that should happen. Again, in my company, an example that we do is RFCs, request for comments documents. They look something like this in terms of the outline. Basically, we ask people to start writing down the problem they're trying to solve. Usually it's big architectural problems in this case, because this is where we call for a group of people to come together and decide together the direction we want to take. So people start writing down what the constraints are, why they might want to do something in a certain way, etc. And they have to start thinking, when they look at the solution they want to propose, to a set of functional and non-functional requirements that are important to us. And they have to explain how the solution is scaling, or what's the infrastructure behind it. Is it reliable? Is it redundant? And blah, 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 blah. This then gets brought into a meeting where every engineer is invited to. People can have the document as a pre-read, they can leave comment, the comment gets discussed in the meeting. After the meeting, that's it. The meeting is a communal thing. It's not like there is not a panel that decides for everyone. The person that brings the request for comment is responsible to make the final decision. The team is responsible for the final decision. But they gather input from the rest of the organization. If someone has done something similar already and they failed or had problems, they can state it. They can say, oh yeah, no, this doesn't work the way you expect it to work. We can discuss it, etc. This is incredibly good also to keep everyone aligned on what you're doing in the organization. If you have a bigger organization, maybe less worth it for smaller companies, but it's still something that enables decision-making, again, at scale, with big organization, without leaving anyone feeling someone else is making the decision for them. Everyone is involved, everyone is invited. Again, the structure might vary, not all the problems go through all of these. It's not like a rigid scheme, it's just a list of things people need to be mindful of. And then we capture it. We keep a record, a log, so that people can go back and look at why they made decisions. So if you discover something, if you think you discover something new that invalidates the decision, you can go back and check what the comments were, like was it considered and blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, it also delivers a good historical of your company decision-making, which is quite nice. Again, as I said before, it's a culture-enabled thing. You need to work on other things before you can get comfortable doing this process in a healthy way. But, it's the classic dog with its own tail, right? Like, by doing those things and iterating over the process, you get better at it, and eventually, working with people, you'll find a way through. And then, one last thing for me that has been critically important for us as an organization has been going back and recheck the decision we made. One tool that we found very useful was the Tech Radar. You might have heard of it because Tough Work analyzes the industry at large and places technologies on the various quadrant. Who is familiar with the Tech Radar, by the way? Have you ever heard of it? Okay, so let me play it back for a second. So the Tech Radar is this set of circles. There are different quadrants. Each quadrant are based on different areas of software development. It could be tools, techniques, platforms, languages, and framework. And Tough Work, what they do is assessing specific technologies and placing them on the axis of old, so not invest in it, don't apply that technology. Assess, which means that it's a rising technology that you might want to try. That you might want to start considering, but it's not like fully established yet. Trial, which is technologies that are in a good place, but they're not yet the technology to go for. And adopt, which is the technology that they do recommend for you to use in your company. Again, this is for the industry at large, but you can do your own version. So this is Zalando. They publish it publicly, and they map the whole estate across these 4 dimensions and across these things. So you could consider, for example, if you have an organization that, like mine, came through a merger, and we have .NET developers, and we have JavaScript developers, and we have TypeScript developers, etc., etc. You start mapping the technologies that you're using, and you decide, where do we want to go as an organization? Do we want to be a .NET company? Do we want to be a JavaScript company? Do we want to be both? Like, it's fine. But you need to be mindful and make decision in that direction, not just leave it alone. Otherwise, you'll end up with someone trying, I don't know, Java, because they figure it's the best thing for that job, and it might as well be, but again, we go back to the question, do we need another technology in our organization? We have so many already. We are already struggling to fill all the positions because, you know, it's tough to rotate people in different teams because we have .NET here and JavaScript there. So do we need Java? Maybe not, maybe yeah. But it should be a managed decision, not just left to its own, or a hype-driven decision anyway. So again, as I said, it does allow for avoiding repeating the same mistakes. In bigger organizations, it also allows for teams to know if someone else has already tried something. So if you work in an organization that has 200, 300 developers, there might be a team that had already tried the thing that you want to try. You could lean on them to understand what the journey was for them and try to converge. And yeah, we're going to make mistakes. This is, as I said before, is not a recipe, right? We will screw up. That's fine. Again, we try to do our best. We manage the decision. We don't leave it to randomness. It's not necessarily that this makes the best decision, but at least we manage the process. Okay, I work in a very small organization. This doesn't apply to me, right? Some of you might be thinking that now, right? Raise your hand if you're thinking that. Fair enough, I get it. I'd love to have a chat. Most of the stuff I discuss, I think it does apply in small organizations as well. Maybe not everything, I give you that, but I do believe that it should apply just fine. But also, these are things that you can bring with you. I'm giving you inputs. I'm not saying you should use everything tomorrow, right? Think about why you're here, maybe next job, these make sense, and you apply them. It doesn't have to be now. Almost there. You're through. So, wrapping up. Sorry, leaving with a quote because I like quotes. I didn't know where to place this slide, so I just left it there because I love the quote. So we look through the reason why we're here. We look through the fact that the economy is important. We agree to disagree on the fact that code is a liability and that decisions result in debt. And that led to me recommending a few ways of potentially managing decisions in a better and controlled way. The kind of framework to be principle-driven, for example, rapid, RFCs and decision records, and ultimately Decorator. The thing is, these tools and techniques are just means. This is not the goal. Like these are tools. Again, the goal is actually to enable mindful decision making. Because every single decision might as well be debt. But conscious debt is actually an investment. So you can turn something that is potentially negative in something positive, either for the business value you're delivering, supporting your colleagues, serving your users, or in preparation for your next job. And that's it. Wait a sec.
Is it though? Is it really the end?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I wanted to recommend the book.
I knew it.
Thank you. So I wanted to recommend the book I haven't read, but it, I would.
Is that a joke?
No, it's true. It's basically, I was recommended this book. I didn't read it yet, but according to my source, it's really good, and it does apply, I think, quite sensibly to the topic of my talk. So I wanted to recommend it to everyone because I trust the person that recommended it to me. And again, well, let's read it together. You can find me on Mastodon if you are on that thing. I have yet to figure out exactly how it works, but in Italian and in English. You can read me later in front of a spritz, and now that's it.
I don't believe you, man.
It's true, that's it.
Shall we have a round of applause then?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mark. Hey, where are you going, folks? Ciao, thank you so much. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you for staying until the end.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Do we have any questions for Marco? Ooh.
Really? Not used to it.
Useless.
Yeah, my question, I want to extend a little bit your, let's say, economy analogy. So the economy works in cycles, right? And I mean, it's an interesting strategy, but what many people do is when the economy is going up, that's when they sell. And when the economy is going down, well, they buy to sell higher later. So could it be an approach to consider while everybody is kind of panicking in fear and focusing on profitability, people that already raise capital or have money or are already profitable to continue or maybe expand or on their R&D and be a contrarian in that sense?
So if you remember correctly, at the very beginning I said I'm deeply unqualified to talk about economy. So the answer is I don't know. It might be. What we've been reporting on the newsletter that I mentioned before, the Practical Engineer, is a trend that is noticing or is predicting on the market. That doesn't mean that every single company is doing that, right? But again, we all have noticed some redundancy here and there and some signals of the market changing. Again, it might as well be as you say. And I do believe that there is a potential for a whole lot of new startups, because as people lose his jobs and there is a lot of real talent out there that might not be able to find the right job and blah, 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 they might come up with business ideas themselves, like a lot of entrepreneurial people is out there striving to create the next big thing, right? So it's not like, this is not a pessimistic talk. It's a talk that tries to create mindfulness about the fact that decision-making has always been important. Potentially today is a bit more important because we're going to be a bit under pressure for efficiency and being profitable and all of those things. Again, I didn't want to scare anyone. I hope I didn't.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question. So you mentioned shift left, right? And how do we handle that in a constructive way? Let's say if developers get assigned more and more responsibilities, do we choose something like generalist, T-shaped roles, or there are better approaches?
It's a tough one because it really depends on the organization. So I myself was in an organization where the first thing to disappear was agile coaches. So we used to have agile coaches embedded in every single team, and all of a sudden the engineering manager of the team was responsible for the process, the practices and all of that, because we achieved a point where people were comfortable with it, and that was the first thing to be shifting on engineers. We still have QAs and QEs, not many, but we do. Some other companies got rid of them and pushed the quality onto engineers. It's very difficult to say what your company might be needing. I think there is your leaders should be clear with you about the expectation and should be clear in supporting you through the journey of taking on those responsibilities. If you have a leadership that just pushes things to you and says, like tomorrow you'll be the one responsible for it without giving you the right support, that's a bit of a red flag for me. I'm not saying you should change job, but manage up. Try to educate them to understand that that's something that your team needs support for. Be explicit about it. Like, if you, for example, again, let's say in the QA world, if from tomorrow you've been told, like, QA is your responsibility, you need to raise the fact that your team might not be able to deliver at the same speed, also taking on the QA responsibility, or the quality could drop a little bit. And is that acceptable for your company? It's like, is weighting price and price that the company makes decisions, that the business makes decisions, right? So highlight what the cost is of the shift left and try to have an honest conversation with your leaders and see what that leads. And it might be that there isn't much room to adjust, but at least you raised your concerns and you made it clear what the cost could be. And that could hopefully sparkle the right conversation.
So we can say it depends.
Pretty much.
Any other questions? Okay, last round of applause for Marco. Grazie.